This video contains mature subject matters including graphic violence, death, and assault. This video is not intended for anyone under 18 years of age.
In this last episode, we're going to cover all of the loose ends regarding Dennis Rader that did not fit into the first 3 episodes. We're going to talk about other crimes that he's being investigated for, how Dennis Rader spent his free time prior to being arrested, including motel parties, hidey holes, his journal, autoerotic asphyxiation, which is super hard to say together, the crimes he almost committed, and the crimes he did not get charged for, but there was ample evidence for. If this is your first time watching House of Crime, welcome. We highly recommend that you watch the first 3 episodes of this series, which cover the crimes, who the killer was, and how he got caught.
You're watching House of Crime podcast.
Although Dennis Rader pled guilty to 10 charges of murder, there are a few crimes that people have speculated that he could have committed, although we are not aware of evidence for these crimes. One such incident was the murder of Philip Fager and his 2 daughters in Wichita, Kansas. On December 30th, 1987, Philip Fager was shot. He and his 2 deceased daughters were found in their home. His car was taken.
Oh.
The daughters, 16 and 9, were found floating in the hot tub with the fabric top closed.
Oh my God.
The 9-year-old girl, Sherry, was strangled with electrical tape. The 16-year-old Kelly was drowned. Her father received 2 gunshots in the back at close range near the front door. He was still wearing his coat. The gun was a .38 caliber. Sherry, the 9-year-old, had her wrists tied behind her back with the same tape. Kelly was found nude. Semen was found in the tub.
Oh my God. And okay, was it viable semen? I guess we'll probably get to that. And I suppose that the father was killed immediately with his coat still on, and then he went to the girls who were in the hot tub. I was a child who spent time in the hot tub in my parents' backyard. And I mean, to think how often we left the front door even open. All the time.
And this was like 87. I mean, that was super common to leave doors open. And the story gets more strange.
Okay.
The semen could be unrelated to the crimes, as sexual activity in a hot tub is not unusual. And earlier in the day, the handyman believed that the oldest daughter and her boyfriend were in the hot tub. So they could not conclusively say that the DNA was from this crime.
Okay.
A man, William Butterworth, was found with Mr. Fager's car in Florida. He would be charged with the murders. However, he was acquitted due to lack of evidence. This man had been doing renovations on the Fager home during the time of the murders. Butterworth admitted to walking into the home at the same time the shots were being fired and fled the scene.
Okay.
He was also found not guilty of the car theft, which I find very odd. He obviously had the car in Florida, many states away from Kansas. Although the verdict was not guilty of the murders, the police considered the case closed and it was not investigated further, which is crazy. Butterworth had been doing some home repairs for the Fager family. He accidentally interrupted the crime in progress, grabbed Mr. Fager's keys by mistake. Interestingly, Mr. Fager's car was found 7 blocks away. So did he leave his car 7 blocks away, or did the killer find his keys and take his vehicle?
Here's a plot twist. What if Fager actually worked with Rader? And because there's all that speculation about how did he ever have a second person with him? I know we don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but this is very close to what Rader did, but also different.
I think it's an important conversation, but I don't think Rader could ever have friends in any way whatsoever. So I literally don't believe...
Just because you murder someone with someone doesn't mean you're friends.
It's not the murdering thing. It's the stare with dead eyes and the lack of humor and how he actually... There's no evidence that he ever had friends. I don't think he was capable of having friends.
Yeah, I just don't think... I mean, we can cut all this, but I just don't think that accomplices to murder are necessarily friends.
I mean, you have to be able to trust that person, right? So there's got to be a level of trust there.
The level would be, if you tell on me, I'm telling on you. And that's as far as
It's
it
just
needs
like,
to go.
we're talking about like terrible
Serial killer
people who are most likely idiots anyways.
Serial killer toddlers.
So it seems that the dad would be shot first, and then the youngest daughter tied up while the killer dealt with Kelly.
Oh my God.
Kelly was found nude in the water. Then the youngest was killed. She was still fully clothed, as far as I can tell. She was strangled and then drowned.
Oh,
so
God.
This killer, I don't know.
Left her there to drown.
We don't really know if the father came in the middle of the crime, or if the killer entered the home, saw the dad, came in right away and killed him. Obviously, the dad was shot in the back. He still had his coat on. He
didn't have any time.
He was found at the front door, so he was just handled right away. We know that BTK had guns. I have never seen a list of all the guns that he had. So whether he had a .38 caliber handgun, I have no clue whatsoever. These daughters were, one daughter was strangled. Were they both strangled? I can't remember already. But there was strangling involved. There was DNA involved. To me, this does sound like a crime that BTK could have done. And it also happened during the day, which we know BTK is a fan of, going and doing heinous crimes in the middle of the day. It gets better. In January 1988, Mary Fager, who was not home at the time of the crimes, she was actually out of town, I think, for a couple of days. So, she received a letter from a man claiming to be BTK. The letter said, quote, "I did not kill your family, but I admire the work," unquote.
How disgusting.
So disgusting. And I mean, maybe this was BTK, maybe it wasn't, but I mean, we know how much he loved to get attention. So it wouldn't surprise me if he sent a letter regarding another crime just to remind people, I'm still here, I'm still out here.
He loves the attention. He really does.
The writer of the letter stated that they admired the killer. I don't believe there's any evidence that BTK did kill Philip Fager and his two daughters, although the crimes themselves do sound eerily like Dennis Rader. Also, I believe this is the only time that BTK sent a letter to the family of a victim. Very odd. Although if he had committed these murders, chances are he would have sent letters to the local newspaper, TV station, and police station, because he loved to take credit for his crimes. DNA found at the scene did not match William Butterworth. Did not. I've never heard if the DNA was run against Dennis Rader. I hope that it was, I would imagine. But since the police closed the case, believing that Butterworth did the crimes, maybe they didn't run the DNA. I have no idea. I could not find any more information about that.
I think that once the case is closed, there is no reason to run the DNA in their minds.
Yeah.
So it would have to have been reopened as a cold case or something.
Right.
It would have had to be reopened, and then they would have to run the DNA.
Yeah.
And for that kind of request, it would need to be higher ups. It wouldn't just be like a police officer saying, "I have this inkling. Let's reopen this."
Let me add a thing. You know, we talked previously about BTK having a manuscript that he was writing with 13 chapters of his victims.
Episode 3.
There are 3 victims in the Fager crimes,
Interesting.
which would add 10 to 3, equaling 13. Just saying.
Yeah, because so that makes sense. The Otero family being 4 victims, they would have each had their own chapter.
I mean, I think I always assumed that, but I've never seen the manuscript. I don't know that for a fact. But good point. That's a very good point.
And their murders, the adults not so much, but the children were relatively quick. And BTK didn't watch the Otero boy die. He left him there by himself, so that wouldn't be much of a chapter.
God, it just breaks my heart.
So you would think that would be murders themselves.
I hope they release this one day. I mean, I don't know if they ever will, but please, state of Kansas, release all the information. He's in prison. He's going to die. Can we see his journals and everything? I'd love to see it.
We need to learn about this. He's, psychologically speaking, he's a very interesting study. He's not like any of the other serial killers, other psychopaths. He's completely different.
He would love to hear that. That would make him happy, I think.
That's not for him. That's for the students.
I agree. In the early morning hours of July 5th, 2004, so July 4th just happened. It's now nighttime, July 5th. A train crew saw an object on the tracks, but thought it might be a traffic cone. However, after the train ran over the object, the crew was certain it was not a cone.
Oh, man.
They stopped the train and checked the area, but didn't see anything. The next train that ran through did find the nude body of 19-year-old Jake Allen.
God.
I know. It's hard. This story is so heartbreaking.
So awful already.
Jake had recently graduated from Argonia High School as the valedictorian.
Wow.
Okay, so smart kid.
Yep.
He was planning to study optometry at Northeastern Oklahoma University. He was an athlete, competing in football, baseball, and track. Not only was he a member of the National Honor Society, he was also a member of the Speech Club, the Forensics Club, and the Math Club. So, brilliant, well-rounded young man, right?
I'm also a member of the National Honor Society.
Hey, so was I, but it was a really long time ago. I have a book. Did you buy the book?
No, they charge a lot of money to be a part of
I
this.
think it was expensive. Jake had been tied to the train tracks with baling wire.
Oh.
Remember baling wire?
Yes.
We've talked about this before.
Yes, I do.
Baling wire is used for mending fences or tying hay bales.
Unless you're BTK, it is used to murder people.
Well, he used baling wire to hang animals in the barn.
That's right.
When he was a child. I also recall Dennis Rader having fantasies of tying women to train tracks. Remember that?
That's true.
Eventually, the case was determined to be a suicide, so no one was ever charged with the crime. So this young man, in the eyes of the police, tied himself to train tracks with baling wire.
Okay, I'm just going to break that down real quick. For that to be true, he would have to be so suicidal that he would have had to tie himself to the track so he couldn't have any last minute
Change of mind.
And there have been people in history to do things of that measure.
Yes.
But I don't know. I don't know this person, but it seems like he had a lot of really good positives in his life. He was going someplace, and to go out in a gruesome death like that doesn't seem accurate. You would think that if he really was suicidal, it would have been quick and painless.
I agree. I totally agree. So no one was ever charged with the crime. It was really hard to find more information on his death. The poor young man had his entire life ahead of him. They not only found him naked, but again, tied to the tracks. His clothes were found farther down the train track, a black sweatshirt and red pants. Some say that the force of the train tore off Jacob's clothing.
Again, just looking at this forensically, if he was wearing his black sweatshirt, red pants, there would have been shreds still attached to the mangled body. Not further down the train track where he was not. There would have been shreds, pieces.
I agree.
Along the track.
And I couldn't find it, like, you know, the police determined this was a suicide, so the information just stopped coming out. Mm-hmm. There's just no information out there. And I agree with you. If the train tore the clothes off of him, the clothes would have been shredded, for sure. It does make sense to me that the clothes would be found further ahead because the train's coming, hits a young man, the clothes get pulled off in the process, and then probably wrapped around the wheels and then eventually come off of the train.
Let's look further. Every one of us, even the viewers, has taken a sweatshirt off before. And how many times has your head been stuck in that sweatshirt?
Every time.
As you take that off. The arms maybe, but the head. And it doesn't seem reasonable that the whole sweatshirt would have just been off.
I agree. Probably the neck part would still be on, and then they would find shreds of the clothing. Yeah. And like I said, I just don't know. I don't know. I couldn't find detailed information because it was a suicide, which I really struggle with this. So there has been chatter that this could have been related to Dennis Rader. The employees of the Wichita Public Library, you remember them, and they've received other things from Dennis Rader, found a package labeled BTK on July 17th, 2004. They reported the package to the police. In the package, there was a letter titled Jakey.
Oh.
The writer claimed that he had to stop working on chapter 2 of his book because of the death of Jacob Allen. He stated, quote, "I was so excited about this incident that I had to still tell the story," unquote. The writer claimed that he used computer chats to lure Allen to the woods. He stated that he was a private detective, which we've heard that before, who wanted Jacob's help to catch a serial killer.
And he just shows up? I don't victim blame. My apologies. It just sounds teenagers, young 20-somethings, they don't have enough world experience to think, I shouldn't trust this. I shouldn't go there.
No. After analysis of Jacob's computer, the police determined that Jacob did not have chats with Dennis Rader. Later, in interrogation, Dennis Rader retracted the story, saying it was a smokescreen and that the death of Jacob did intrigue him.
Well, again, I don't believe anything Rader says.
No, me neither. I don't believe anything he says.
It doesn't really matter that he came out and agreed and admitted to the 10 murders. It doesn't mean he gained any trust with what he's saying. I mean, it's...
Yeah, but also, I'm curious, were there other letters that we haven't been told about? Because, now we've just heard of 2 other times that BTK sent correspondence in regards to 2 other people's deaths. So are there more that we're just not aware of? I mean...
It is a common tactic of the police department to only let out a certain amount of information and to purposely keep other information to themselves.
Yeah.
So that way, when they do catch the murderer and they really think this person's the one who did the heinous crime, they will let out a piece of evidence not told to the public, and they'll know.
Yeah. Which, that makes a lot of sense, for sure. Cynthia Dawn Kinney, who was 16, was last seen in Pawhuska, Oklahoma on June 23, 1976, at the Osage laundromat in the mid-morning hours. Cynthia was working at the laundromat on the day that she disappeared. She had cheerleading practice that day and had to leave by a specific time. There were several reports of her being in a car with different people that day and even sightings over the years. Dennis Rader had a chapter in his journal called, quote, Bad Wash Day, unquote. This chapter was from 1976, the same year that Miss Kinney went missing. In his journal, he stated that he watched the laundromat and would do certain things. Again, with him doing certain things. I think we can all figure out what he meant by that. Rader was questioned extensively, and can I just, say a gross thing? Sometimes when I see... Okay, I'm just not going to say it.
Say it anyway and we'll cut it.
Sometimes when I see a guy sitting in his car by himself, at the park or whatever, I'm just like, what are you doing in your car, dude?
You don't have to be embarrassed by that thought. Us women and gay men and everyone part of the LGBTQ plus community has had this thought because we have been victims for a very long time. And in order for us to stop being victims, we have to start being very aware of our surroundings. And even grown men sitting alone in their car in front of a park full of children who don't seem to have children around, that should set off red flags. And men have to be aware that this is something that sends off red flags for us.
Yeah.
For this whole giant world of people... men, it doesn't matter the color of their skin. They are scary.
Yeah.
And it is smart of us to be aware of this. And that if we are not aware of it, it could be the end for us if this person happens to be. So would we rather be dead or aware that it could be a possibility?
Right.
Just like you told me when I was a child, if someone ever tries to grab me, I have to fight and fight and fight because that might be the last time.
If they get you in their car, there's a good chance no one's ever going to see you alive again.
Exactly.
And that's just a fact. And that's just the sad fact. It's just a fact.
Yeah. And that alone is why, as adults, we now look at single person male drivers. And the thing is, it could be a woman too.
Of course.
But if it's a woman, we all know, as a woman, I could take many women. I'm not afraid of another woman coming after me.
That's correct.
Yeah. And if it is a man, I think, okay, could I take
Men are so much stronger than us. Physically so much stronger and generally bigger most of the time. Rader was questioned extensively regarding the missing Miss Kinney. He emphatically stated that he did not kill anyone other than the crimes he's already admitted to. One point of interest is that when the interview concluded, Rader asked the sheriff if he would like to know one of his fantasies. The sheriff replied yes.
Of course.
Rader went on to share that he always wanted to kidnap a girl from a laundromat.
All right, then.
Yeah. Dennis Rader... Dennis Rader had been writing a book about his murders. The book had 13 chapters. As we know, he has admitted to 10 murders. Chapter 9 refers to a brunette who worked at a laundromat. He stated that the laundromat was a good place to watch victims and dream.
And we'll put a photo up of these victims.
Yes.
So you can see that she is, in fact, a brunette.
The sheriff's office believes that Rader could have easily been working in the area at the time for ADT. Remember when he was installing home security systems?
Yep.
The laundromat was approximately a 2.5-hour drive from his home in Park City, Kansas. Because of this investigation, the yard of Dennis Rader's previous home was once again dug up by the sheriff's department. This happened just in 2023, just probably about 6 months ago. They did find another hiding place buried beneath a concrete block. The sheriff's office found bindings that contained knots, possibly used previously, and other personal items that may belong to victims. There were also drawings that Rader made of potential victims. One is considered a possible match for Cynthia Kinney. Osage County District Attorney Mike Fisher has officially stated that they do not have enough evidence to tie Dennis Rader to the disappearance of Miss Kinney at this time and that he is not currently a suspect. On the date of Cynthia's disappearance, a phone call was made to the sheriff's office, reporting that her remains would be found in an old barn. Her remains have never been found.
It screams Dennis Rader.
It totally screams Dennis Rader, like, so hard.
And I'll tell you, just because he doesn't want to admit it doesn't mean that he didn't do it.
Yeah.
There could be things he wants to keep for himself.
Yes.
And
I struggle with that, though, because he really likes to be in the news and to know that people are talking about him. He wants to be known as a serial killer. Mm-hmm. So, I can see both sides, him wanting to keep stuff for himself, and on the other hand, him wanting to, like, tell authorities so he can be, like, in the news again and stuff.
Unless he's saving it for a rainy day when the world starts to forget Dennis Rader.
I mean, he's so old and decrepit now. I would be shocked if he lived out this year, to be honest. I really would be. There's a picture of him. I'll find it and put it in this video. There's a picture of him from, like, the past year or so. It's terrible. He looks horrible. He's not doing well.
If he hadn't been a serial killer, I would feel bad for him for how bad he looks.
Yes, of course.
And obviously, I don't. But that he does look awful.
You know what they say, evil never dies, so maybe he'll live 10 more years. Who knows? On December 2nd, 1990, remains were found in McDonald County, Missouri. The female had been raped, strangled, and hogtied with 6 different cords, including one military-grade paracord that had only just become available to the public. The unknown victim would be known as Grace Doe for 31 years. And I mean, before I read the rest of this, I just want to say this poor young lady had such a hard life. And this is one of those crimes that just really, really makes me so very sad.
She had a hard life and a hard death.
The remains were found behind an abandoned farmhouse. Huh. There's a farmhouse again.
Yeah.
In 2021, DNA tests revealed Grace Doe to be Shauna Beth Garber, who was 22 in 1990.
A baby.
And from Topeka, Kansas, a 2-hour drive from Park City, Kansas. Rader has denied any involvement in the disappearance or murder of Shauna Garber. There's very little information about the adult life of Shauna Garber, and unfortunately, no photographs. She was placed in the foster care system as a child due to physical abuse from her mother. Wow. I've never seen any proof that she was reported missing at the time of her disappearance. It literally seems that nobody cared about this poor young woman. She had no family. She had nobody that loved her enough to report her missing. There are no photographs of her.
Rader had been engaging in autoerotic fantasies since childhood. This included being spanked, watching chickens get slaughtered, and even an unhealthy obsession with bondage and asphyxiation. That is a hard word to say. Yeah. Rader would walk around with 3x5 note cards in his pockets with women, as we talked about, bound and naked.
Gagged.
Later, Dennis Rader would rent a hotel room for what he called motel parties. He would dress up like a woman, then bind and handcuff himself, and sometimes would cover his head with a plastic bag and restrict his breathing. And
we'll put some photos of some of these motel parties or his.
We will put up photos.
He liked to take photos of himself. So there are some photos out there.
Luckily, there are no photos of what he would do next. Masturbate.
Yeah, I don't want to see that.
Rader had hidey holes, that's what he called them, throughout Wichita. While at each victim's home, he would rummage around stealing jewelry, IDs, underwear, and other trinkets. After killing someone, he would take photos of their deceased body and keep them with the other things he took. He would put them in hiding places throughout the county, some in his home, some in his church, others buried or taped to bridges. These trophies would later add to his autoerotic fantasies and masturbation habits.
Some of them were found also in his, I don't think you said this, in his office as a city compliance officer. Or he became a manager, I believe. And so he had like a filing cabinet filled with a bunch of stuff. They found stuff there too. He always kept copies of everything he sent out. So he made it actually really easy for the police to tie him to a lot of the crimes because he kept copies of so much of the stuff that he sent.
Rader would also dress up in his victims' clothes and take photos of himself in them. So the photos that we show will actually be, some of them are in clothes he's actually taken from the victims he's murdered. He also kept a journal which gave a lot of evidence that his confessions were accurate. However, there are potential victims he spoke of that got away, and other entries that indicate that he may have had more victims. One in particular is PJ Bad Wash Day, and PJ stands for Project. In this one, he writes that he watched a potential brunette victim, but that it did not work out. These actions would become the thing that helps him prolong murdering people. Eventually, the powerful urge to kill would be too great, and Rader would commit his next evil murder. His wife actually found a poem he wrote titled Shirley Locks, which we talked about in one of our other episodes. Rader was enrolled in college at this time, and when she confronted him about it, he told her that it was an assignment for class. She dismissed it, much like she dismissed the notes and newspaper clippings that detailed things about the BTK killer. And when she noticed that her husband's spelling was as bad as the BTK killer, she said the joke, "You spell just like BTK."
I didn't know that. So my understanding is that the wife of Dennis Rader actually caught him, I believe, twice, dressed in women's clothing, being all involved in his fantasy.
Yeah.
And I think the second time that she caught him, she said, "I don't ever want to see you dressed like this again or doing these activities again because you will not see me or the children again." And he was good enough to not get caught by her. He didn't stop, but he wasn't caught by her again.
And she, ever since she found out that he is the BTK killer, she, of course, as we know, divorced him.
She had an emergency divorce.
The same day.
Yeah, emergency divorce.
And normally you have to wait at least 6 months.
Rex Hewerman's wife also got an emergency divorce when he was arrested last year.
He's probably so excited that they are living the same life, him and BTK.
He is so disgusting, Rex Hewerman, and I know that's not part of the story, but man, oh man, are we going to learn so many things about that lunatic. Like, imagine being caught in your 50s. I can't even imagine all of the crimes he's committed. It is going to be so insane. I'm so glad he's off the streets.
So this wife, it's really interesting to me that she had inklings. She caught her husband. And let me tell you, if I caught my husband cross-dressing, I wouldn't be like, "I'm taking the kids." I mean, but this was a different time. And then it was super
Okay, taboo. But hold on a second. Dennis Rader wasn't just cross-dressing. Dennis Rader was involved in autoerotic asphyxiation. He had masks. He put bags over his head. He did. Like, somebody being a cross-dresser should not be alarming. There's lots of people who, for whatever reason, are not able to be the person that they feel they are inside, and they may act out in their own private time.
Well, in your studying, did you see that he was wearing a mask, or was tied up, or was
there's not that kind of information.
So without that kind of information, all I know is that he was cross-dressed.
Right, sure.
And she put in the big veto card. But then compiling that idea with BTK's handwriting, or spelling, BTK's spelling, and given that, and that she found this poem, Shirley Locks, to me, I feel like maybe she didn't want to see the truth, because a woman dies named Shirley Vion.
Yes.
Vion. And then her husband, who has the same spelling tendencies as BTK, has a poem, Shirley Locks. I would have put those two together.
I mean,
I would have started questioning.
Nobody wants to believe that their loved one, the person they married, the person they sleep in the same bed with, the person that they birthed children with, nobody wants to believe that this person is capable of these kind of heinous things. I can't imagine anybody's going to quickly jump on that and be like, oh my God, you must be BTK. Like, I just don't see that happening. Nobody wants to believe this kind of stuff.
Isn't it a little selfish, though, to think these things make sense? I'm just going to keep that to myself and have my happy little family and raise my children and ignore the fact that this person could be terrifying.
Like, I literally get what you're saying, but what if he was also the guy that got her coffee every morning and brought her a cup of coffee in bed and was like, here, sweetheart, here's your coffee. Or he was the kind of guy who, like, maybe he liked to throw her towel in the dryer when she was in the shower and brought it to her. Mm-hmm. I'm just saying, what if he had these, like, couple of tender moments and she thought, there's no way my husband, who's capable of these couple tender things, can actually be a person who does these heinous. Although, I have to say, like, forgetting the cross-dressing, if I knew that there was, like, a serial killer in my town who had terrible spelling and that my husband had the same spelling.
And the poem titled Shirley Locks.
Yeah. I mean...
And he kept clippings of the BTK killer. He's obsessed with himself.
There are lots of people who... Like, we have a true crime show. People could say the same things about, oh, look... I mean, if somebody, like, investigated what's on my computer, they would be like, holy hell, look what she's keeping.
Also true. I have a lot of very sketchy searches I've had to do since we started this because I need to look... Like, I'm like, define pedophile in APA, which is the American Psychological Association, so I want to know what their take is on pedophile.
Yes.
But, like... Yes, so I feel really skeevy even looking into pedophilia.
Like, I remember when... Like, years ago, Casey Anthony, this was, like, after her trial or whatever.
Chloroform.
But she supposedly looked up chloroform, or somebody looked up chloroform on their home computer. And I think I did a search on, can you actually make chloroform at home? Like, I don't want to make chloroform. I'm not going to make chloroform.
But you were trying to check the evidence.
Because all the time, I hear something and I'm like, if I hear something about nutrition, I'm like, well, let me check that out. And I'll do a quick search. If I hear something about chloroform, I might do a quick search and see what that's about, too. Yeah. And I'm not going to do, like, incognito, although I don't know that actually makes a difference in the long run. But, I mean...
It doesn't. Police can search through your incognito searches.
I have no idea how that works, but...
Because it's all still saved through Google. Through whatever your search engine is.
Yeah.
They actually save it. It's just not saved to your phone. So your loved ones don't know what you're looking at.
So it's saved. It's just that your spouse or whoever can't do a quick search and find it real fast.
Yeah. It's for the hub.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we all know that.
Yeah.
When Dennis Rader was being charged for his crimes and in court, District Attorney Nola Falston stated in court that due to the statute of limitations, there are many crimes they would have liked to prosecute Rader for, but were unable. These crimes include stalking, aggravated kidnapping, aggravated battery, attempted first-degree murder, aggravated burglary, theft, criminal threat, aggravated indecent liberties with a child. We've talked about this. Aggravated sexual battery, animal cruelty, misuse of public funds, that's an interesting one, and terrorism in connection with terrorist acts against the Sedgwick County community.
Wow, this is why I don't agree with the statute of limitations, because many of these, we're talking aggravated kidnapping, attempted first-degree murder, aggravated indecent liberties with a child, aggravated sexual battery. These are some specific ones that should not have a limitation.
Yeah. Why would we have a statute of limitations on these things? I mean, no, 7 years. I don't know if it's that for every state, but I mean, if you have indecent liberties with a child, there should be no statute on that. And I know some states are starting to change that, but it needs to be changed.
Yes, guys, I understand that he has life in prison. I get that.
Yeah.
But these victims deserve the top tier punishment that he deserves. And the statute of limitations actually limits the victims from being able to get that.
I agree. Rader targeted several other women throughout the years. Some of the women were sent correspondence from Rader. He wrote a poem about one titled, "Oh, Anna, why didn't you appear?" He broke into the home of Anna Williams in 1979, but she did not come home during the period that he waited for her. He sent the poem to Anna and to the local news station. Anna moved away from the area soon after.
I would too.
Yeah, I think she 100%, because I don't know if he ever would have been able to drop it.
Probably not.
I bet he would have gone back to her home and tried again and again, because he was stalking her. Like, he wanted this to happen, and her staying in the area probably could have been detrimental for her.
Mm-hmm.
Rader dug graves for women who he was never able to kill. There were attempted kidnappings, during which time he was not successful. He like, literally, I think there was a bank employee that he tried to kidnap, like, right in the parking lot. Like, there were, like, all kinds of other crimes that this man did.
Did he admit to the graves he dug, or did they find old graves?
I'm not really sure if it was... I don't know if it was in his journal. I don't think they found it, but I think they found out in some way, either in his journal or maybe... I don't know that he confessed. I don't think that he really confessed to a lot more than what they asked for. Here's
why I ask. He didn't really bury any of his victims.
Correct.
2 of them he did leave outside.
Yes.
One he just tossed.
Yes.
And the other one he covered with some shrubbery.
Right.
So he didn't, in fact, bury any of them.
Right.
So that's interesting that he would even discuss as, oh, I dug graves for these victims that, is he just lying? Did he even do that? Were there other victims? Is he trying to
I actually
blow
think,
up his scariness?
I think now I think that he did actually admit to the graves that he dug. But Dennis Rader never stopped hunting. He never stopped stalking. He never stopped fantasizing about murdering women and girls. People like to talk about serial killers having a cooling off period, and they'll even talk about BTK having a cooling off period. He never had a cooling off period. He just wasn't successful in his crimes. Because he never stopped. He never stopped stalking. He never stopped trying to find women that he was going to attack. He never actually stopped. He just wasn't successful. Thank God.
It's like he was stalking, but I mean, he went like 20 years silent.
He didn't go 20 years silent because he had several attempts at women. They just weren't successful.
But like, seriously,
I mean, he had one crime in 85 and one crime in 91. That was 6 years. So saying there's 3 between 91 and 2004, 2005, yeah, that totally makes sense. That totally goes with his time frame.
That's true.
And then 85 and 79. I mean,
because he was definitely like doing these autoerotic things.
Yeah.
To like wait until the next. Otherwise, so serial killers.
He talked about that as well. Like, he talked about his personal autoerotic time actually helped him prolong the amount of time between his kills.
And that's super important in the sense that like psychologists are baffled by it, because like looking at all the others, like Eileen Wuornos, she just like kept going.
Eileen Wuornos just wanted, and I don't know that all this is going to be cut. This is like really good stuff. But Eileen Wuornos had a deep desire to just kill men. Like, she needed to go kill men. So she didn't really have, like, all
Gacy,
of her,
Bundy, all of the best.
But weren't all Eileen Wuornos' crimes, like, murders within a short period of time, like a year? Or,
something like that, yeah.
So, I mean.
Yeah, I just, and that's the thing is, like, serial killers, they tend to not wait long periods of time. And he did, like, years sometimes.
I think it depends on the killer. I don't think they're all the same like that.
I agree with that, because, I mean, those who've studied psychology know that, like, the brain is so unique that it's you can't duplicate anyone else's brain.
Right.
Even if you have the same environment for two people, their genetics play a role. And if you have twins and they are brought up the exact same way,
yes,
there are still things that make them two completely different people.
Yeah.
You know, and so I don't know, he did wait in between the crimes. And definitely, I agree, wasn't successful at times, but the fact that he was even able to wait a year in between some of them is really remarkable.
But I mean, my understanding of Dennis Rader is that what he really enjoyed was the workup to the crime. That was his real big, like, time of excitement, is him finding a person and stalking them, and
so then
planning the fantasy and all of that. That was the real thing for him.
But then the bank teller or employee, when he didn't succeed at kidnapping her, why didn't he continue to try?
Right.
If he's so fixed,
I don't think that this bank employee necessarily was somebody he was stalking. I think this was like a moment of opportunity that he saw, and it wasn't successful, and he was like, "Oh shit, this doesn't work. I need to, like, not keep doing this."
I do think
thing.
he tweaked things to make it
absolutely
find the perfect way to
kill someone. And they all do.
But I also think that he would build up. Like, imagine a temperature gauge getting all the way up to the big red dot. And so he's building up, and then eventually he can't stop himself anymore.
Yeah.
And that's why we have certain victims so then we have random victims like Shirley Vion, who he happened to it just worked out for him in that way.
Right.
And he had a whole other person who he was going to murder that day.
Who wasn't home.
And he let her go too.
Yeah. Okay, that's a very good point.
So it's just interesting to me because I see him in this, like, pent up sexual. I mean, it's disgusting. Don't get me wrong, but I feel like he's got this sexual urge that is rapey, murderous. And it just builds up and builds up. And so then he takes himself to the motel parties. And he gets caught by his wife with these other things. And so he's just, like, building up, and he's stalking and learning. And he's like an animal on the hunt.
Yes.
But then at a certain point, he can no longer contain it. So it doesn't matter at the end of the day who this person is. He just needs to get it out.
And I agree with that, too. Yeah. I mean, his range of women specifically ranged from 11 years old to, I believe, 62.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
which I'll discuss in a minute about his pridefulness with that, but it's interesting that the near misses, the women or people that he wasn't able to kill, he didn't go find someone else then. He didn't say, okay, this didn't work, I'm going to just go kill this other person. He didn't say, I'm going to try again tomorrow, I'm going to keep hunting them, or whatever it was, that pent-up thing wasn't there. And so, yes, he tried, but he gave up, which is interesting. Because you would think that if he really wanted to kill this person, that he would have either continued. He would have either definitely killed them or found a different person. Yeah. You know. But again, he was feeling older and slower at that time.
That's true.
And so maybe he just was like, I don't. Kill yourself. I don't want to kill you.
Well, Carrie Russin, the daughter of Dennis Rader, stated that he is being looked at for several murders across several states. 9 cases in 3 states, Oklahoma, Kansas, and Missouri.
Carrie Russ has been quite helpful for police.
Yeah. Well, I've seen several interviews with her, and she did actually state that a lot of the police weren't interested in her information for a really long time. I think now, I'm sure somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think now that the FBI is actually working with her, but for a long time, they just weren't interested in the information she had, which is, like, bizarro world to me. Like, get all the information you can.
I agree. And times are changing, but possibly when she started getting media attention and giving out information to the media, and the police might have decided, oh, we might want to talk to her.
Yeah.
She seems to have some information we need.
Yeah.
So maybe it has something to do with that. And that sometimes when you
that does
have a
work.
crime happened against you or someone you know, or anything that a crime that you can be a part of, helpful with, sometimes getting the media's attention with that is the one way to get someone to listen to you.
Well, did you all know that Dennis Rader has a connection to Brian Kohlberger? Brian Kohlberger went to DeSales University, which is a private Catholic university, to obtain his master's degree. While at this university, one of his professors was Dr. Catherine Ramsland, who is a well-known forensic psychologist. Dr. Ramsland has also spent close to 10 years interviewing Dennis Rader and has written a book about her interviews titled Confessions of a Serial Killer. Dr. Ramsland has written around 70 books. Very curious whether she'll write a book about Brian Kohlberger. I bet she will after the trial is over.
She seems like she definitely hops on the serial killer bandwagon and wants to, like...
Dude, this woman has written 70 books. She just got an extra master's degree, like, last year. I think in art history or art something. Like, and she also has a TV show. Like, I don't know what her age is, but she's definitely older than me. She has got so much energy. Like, I want to be her when I grow up, like, literally. The Rader house was purchased by the city in 2007 and bulldozed.
The wife sold the home after they got divorced for $90,000 because she wanted to get out. I imagine. They think she's somewhere on the West Coast, I believe, but she has not spoken to the media about any of this. Yeah. She is completely out of the spotlight, doesn't want to discuss it.
I really appreciate that. Her and the son as well.
Yeah, like, is there a son? Yeah. Yes, there's a son.
As a matter of fact, when Carrie does interviews, if someone asks about her mother or her brother, she's like, no, they don't want to be involved. We're going to leave them out. And I can really, really appreciate that.
Yeah. There's no photo of her on the internet.
I've never seen one.
So if you find one,
share
share
about
link.
Their marriage. There may have been one from their marriage when they first got married, like in the paper.
I saw the picture of Rader and his daughter when she got married.
Yeah, I saw that. That's true.
But I didn't see one of him getting married.
I mean, I respect that. I can't imagine the mental hell she's gone through after knowing who her husband was, and still probably sometimes people know who are like, oh, you're so-and-so, and I mean, that's just awful.
I think she's using her maiden name.
I don't blame her.
But how do you even, in this day and age, like, not have anything about you on the media?
I have no idea. She should write a book.
I would love people to learn how to do that.
In one of his correspondence in 2004, Rader used the name Bill Thomas Kilman, and the address was 1684 South Old Manor in Wichita. This is an actual address. Why did he choose this address?
I'll show you the envelope for this one. I have a photo of this address.
I'm super curious. I mean, Bill Thomas Kilman, obviously, that's not a hard...
Oh, BTK!
It's not a hard... Kilman. Yeah, the whole thing...
That's just coming to me now.
That's not a jump, but the address, I think that it was a row house or a townhouse or something when I looked it up. I'm just, like, super curious why he used this address as a return address on a piece of mail, which he didn't have to use a return address at all. You can send mail without a return address. Rader liked to hide things in places. According to his daughter, Carrie, quote, he built a false bottom in our hallway where he hid evidence like driver's licenses before. We also had 2 dogs die, and he buried one in the backyard. I've always theorized that he may have buried stuff in there too, unquote.
Oh, like, I have a need to bury some evidence, but if I'm caught digging a hole in my backyard, my family will think, why am I doing this? So I should kill my dog so that way I have a need to bury him or her, whatever. Bury my dog. And I'm going to sneak some evidence in there too. However, I feel that the police would have uncovered this. I mean, they dug up, like, the whole backyard.
Well, they didn't dig up the whole backyard because they went back just this fall. I think it was August or September, and they did more digging. So they had...
That's when I thought
they had not dug up the whole backyard, and I don't know how much digging they did this past fall. So, hard to know. Hard to know. I mean, as you know, he had hidey holes, like you said, all over the place. It's still possible that there's hidey holes in places that we won't find for a long time.
So after Dennis Rader was caught, he was given a psychological analyzation by Dr. Robert Mendoza. Now, it was found out that Mendoza planned on selling the recordings from the assessment to make money. There's speculation that Rader agreed to it to make money as well. Mendoza had diagnosed him with narcissistic, antisocial, and obsessive-compulsive personality disorder. However, other psychologists believe that Rader should have been diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder, which is NPD, and antisocial personality disorder, which is ASPD, pedophilic disorder, and other specific paraphilic disorder, meaning necrophilia. In Anger Over Confessions, psychologist Howard Brodsky, who consulted with Wichita police on the case, categorized Rader as a goal-oriented psychopath because he operated methodically and purposely surrounded himself with relatively naive people who would not catch on to his secret life. Rader is considered an unconventional psychopath. The affected factor of psychopathy is comprised of 4 items: lack of remorse, shallow affect, callousness or lack of empathy, and failure to accept responsibility.
Not being a psychologist in any way, I would definitely say he fits all of those categories.
Right, I agree. Rader demonstrated shallow affect, lack of remorse, and lack of empathy throughout his court proceedings.
Yes.
He listened to the judge read the details of the crime with a blank look on his face, interrupting at points to correct minor details. When it was his turn to speak, he delivered the details of his crimes to the court in a cold, matter-of-fact manner, sparing no detail and shedding only a few insincere-seeming tears. He expressed hope that God would accept him after all that he had done, a sign of selfish concern.
Well, I mean, he was a good guy after all, right?
But sometimes he could be very bad.
I mean, that
was part of his confession.
That's what he thought about himself.
I'm a good guy, but I could be very bad.
Yeah.
This type of cold, rational explanation of one's actions is characteristic of a psychopath's tendency towards shallow emotion and lack of empathy. In addition to Rader's effective features of psychopathy, he demonstrated interpersonal features of superficial charm, pathological lying, manipulativeness, and grandiose sense of self-worth.
I have a hard time believing that anybody ever, even one time, ever said he had any amount of charm.
He got married. She had to marry him for something.
I know, but back then, it was just she graduated from college, you get married.
So
she met him at church. He's a good guy. He goes to church. She graduated from college. He goes to church. He's obviously a good guy. Yeah. I don't think charm was required in any way whatsoever.
Charm can be misconstrued. It could take something as simple as Rader reiterating what she said back to her and acting as if it's his own words.
It could have been something as simple as him opening the car doors for her when she had never had that in her life. Mm-hmm. And she thought, I mean, this is obviously speculation, but she thought, oh my God, look how nice he is. He opens the door for me.
Exactly. And
he really cares about me.
And we're looking at superficial charm.
Yes.
You know, he's not writing her poems.
I mean, we don't know. He thought he was a poet. Maybe he did write. Maybe he did write her poems. We don't know.
True. He's not coming up with beautiful words of love for her.
I mean, I don't think he was capable of that in any way.
Exactly. And I think with the psychological assessment, it's clear he wasn't capable of that. But it doesn't take much to be superficially charming.
Sure.
You know?
True.
There are 3 lifestyle features of psychopathy: a need for stimulation or proneness to boredom, a lack of long-term goals, and irresponsibility.
Jesus fuck.
It is unknown if Rader exhibited these features in his daily life, but his pattern of crime suggests that he was patient and methodical because he would wait months and even years before killing again. Additionally, he mostly maintained a steady employment and was involved in his community, which suggests he was goal-oriented, occupied his time well, and maintained many commitments for long periods of time. Lastly, it does not seem that he lived a parasitic lifestyle because he provided for his family financially. Now, touching on antisocial personality disorder, or ASPD, it is characterized by a pervasive pattern of disregard for and violation of the rights of others, and that's through an APA definition. For this diagnosis to be given, Rader would need to be an adult with a history of conduct disorder symptoms. For example, patterns of behavior that violate others or behaviors that are inconsistent with age-related social norms during childhood or adolescence. Rader obviously meets most of the criteria for ASPD, including a lack of conforming to social norms with respect to lawful behaviors, like his crimes, deceitfulness, like his use of aliases and living a double life, aggressiveness, like the violent nature of his crimes, reckless disregard for the safety of self or others, like killing, putting himself at risk of death or arrest, and a total lack of remorse, which is his indifference towards the suffering he caused his victims and their families. So it sounds like, to me, he absolutely needed to be diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder. Now, switching to narcissistic personality disorder, or NPD, which is characterized by a pervasive pattern of grandiosity in fantasy or behavior, need for admiration, and lack of empathy, and again, that is also through APA. Rader meets this criteria by showing narcissistic traits, including a grandiose sense of self-importance, a preoccupation with fantasies of power, a belief in his own specialness, a need for excessive admiration, a sense of entitlement, interpersonal exploitation, lack of empathy, and heightened arrogance. Additionally, Rader believed that his way of killing was unique. He also showed pride in the fact that he did not kill just one demographic. When Rader was free...
So wait, he's like so proud that he wasn't a racist in his killing.
Or that he didn't just choose women. He also chose men and children. Yeah.
I mean, the men and boy that was there were only like happenstance. It wasn't his plan.
Yeah. Right.
Whatever. I just cannot get over his obnoxiousness.
And further, when he was free, he felt no one was safe. He might kill men, women, children, all with equal pleasure.
He felt very powerful, is what you're saying.
He believed this made him better and more important than other serial killers. As you can see, Dennis Rader is a true American psychopath. He could have had help in the beginning parts of his life, through his childhood. There were many, many red flags that any one of his parents or instructors could have noticed. There were many times that his wife should have noticed. The red flags Dennis Rader presented went without thought for many people. Unfortunately, 10 or more victims were taken by Dennis Rader. Thank you for watching. Thank you for learning with us. This has been a tremendous journey, a heartbreaking journey, and one I hope to never have to look into again.
Yes, I would love when the series is over to not ever talk about Dennis Rader again until the day he dies, which we shall pour some champagne.
And we'll cover his death then. But until then, look forward to our next video where we uncover a Colorado mystery. One that's still unsolved today and has baffled the town of Sugar Plum.
No, Silver Plume.
Watch out for the Sugar Plum fairies, man. They're all over the place. But I want to use this so bad. It's so good. I have to pee so bad I can't stop laughing. I can't believe you said Sugar Plum. Oh my god, I can't. Okay, 3, 2, 1. One that has baffled the... I'm like a teenager.
I'm sorry, it was so funny.
Sit back. You're messing up my shot. You weren't like this when I said,
Who cares?
one that has baffled the town of Silver Plume, Colorado. Join us next time for shenanigans and murder.